Current estimates and predictions. In region after region, the story is of aging fields with depleted oil reserves. For example, Britain's North Sea oil is at its peak. The giant fields in Alaska, the former Soviet Union, Mexico, Venezuela, and Norway are all past their peak. Oil supply in the United States now accounts for less than half the country's needs. There is always a possibility of some big finds in various regions of the world, but once found, development of the fields is still years away. The only producers with an oil resource which may be capable of keeping oil flowing into the world market at a roughly constant level are the Middle East Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC producers, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. However, most of the oil reserves of Saudi Arabia are held in the large Al Jawar field, which has been pumped since 1948, and not surprisingly, the field is showing signs of exhaustion, with its southern end now flooding with water. Saudi Arabia can keep its production roughly constant for another 7 to 10 years before it too has used up half its total oil resource and rolls over towards depletion. The move will be to smaller fields to produce smaller amounts of crude oil, followed by poor quality fields such as the Manifa field. In the other Gulf states, it is unlikely that Iran could sustain a higher output for the next 2 decades. Kuwait and one of the Emirates, Abu Dhabi, could increase production and may well do so, but their reserves are small relative to world demand. Only one country, Iraq, has the potential for an increase in output on a scale which could make a difference. However, Iraq's oil potential has not been fully explored, but one estimate is that there are 110 billion barrels of crude oil reserves in Iraq, which is equal to more than 1/3 of the total resource once possessed by Saudi Arabia. This oil could not be made immediately available, but it is on a scale to keep world oil production rising for a few more years. Most studies estimate that oil production will peak sometime between now and 2040, although many of these projections cover a wide range of time, including 2 studies for which the range extends into the next century. Key uncertainties in trying to determine the timing of peak oil are the following: 1. Amount of oil throughout the world. 2. Technological, cost, and environmental challenges to produce that oil. 3. Political and investment risk factors that may affect oil exploration and production. 4. Future world demand for oil. 5. And the uncertainties related to exploration and production also make it difficult to estimate the rate of decline after the peak. Studies that predict the timing of the hypothetical peak in oil production, assuming no further discoveries of giant oil fields, use different estimates of how much oil remains in the ground, and these differences explain some of the wide ranges of these predictions. Estimates of how much oil remains in the ground are highly uncertain because much of this data is self-reported and unverified by independent auditors. Many parts of the world have yet to be fully explored for oil, and there is no comprehensive assessment of oil reserves from nonconventional sources. This uncertainty surrounding estimates of oil resources in the ground comprises the uncertainty surrounding estimates of proven reserves, as well as uncertainty surrounding expected increases in these reserves and estimated future oil discoveries. According to current estimates, more than 3/4 of the world's oil reserves are located in OPEC countries. Most OPEC oil reserves are located in the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq contributing 41.8% to the OPEC total. OPEC member countries have made significant contributions to their reserves in recent years by adopting best practices in the industry. As a result, OPEC proven reserves currently stand at 934.7 billion barrels, while non-OPEC reserves, including Russia, are on the order of 303.1 billion barrels. There has been surprise at the OPEC estimates of proven reserves, since OPEC estimates increased sharply in the 1980s, corresponding to the change in OPEC's quota rules that linked a member country's production quota in part to its remaining proven reserves. Indeed, companies that are not subject to the federal securities laws in the U.S. and the related liability standards include companies wholly owned by various OPEC member countries where the majority of reserves are located. In addition, many OPEC countries' reported reserves remained relatively unchanged during the 1990s, even as they continued high levels of oil production. For example, estimates of reserves in Kuwait were unchanged from 1991 to 2002, even though the country produced more than 8 billion barrels of oil over that period and did not make any important new oil discoveries. The potential disbelief in the data reported by OPEC is problematic with respect to predicting the timing of a peak in oil production, because OPEC holds most of the world's current estimated proven oil reserves. On the basis of reserve estimates as of December 2007, of the approximately 1.24 trillion barrels of proven oil reserves worldwide, approximately 75.5%, or 934.7 billion barrels of oil, are located in the OPEC countries, compared with 2.4%, or 29.4 billion barrels in the U.S.